Parallel universes have been the question that we have been trying to answer for years. Time travelers, glitches, Mandela effect, all possible answers to this fantastical theory. Noah, the alleged time traveler from 2030. Back in 2018, this guy had taken the world by storm. Although supposedly being from 2030, he's traveled all across the spectrum to the years 2060, 1999, and the year 2120, to which he also supposedly had video proof of what it would all look like. He explains that the clip he took was from Las Vegas and showcases flying cars to tall, futuristic looking buildings and a very peculiar looking orange sky. Noah explained, "The red clouds are global warming. You can see it's everywhere. I can remember it being incredibly hot. I'm pretty sure they are working on it in the future." He also stated that some really crazy predictions for the future, some key ones being Martin Luther King Jr.'s granddaughter will become president, scientists live on Mars, Instagram becoming a thing of the past, cures for illnesses, and finally being able to talk to aliens. Noah also disclosed taking anti-aging pills that keep him the same age throughout his journeys, since he claims that time traveling makes you gain years. Of course, no one really believed any of this, especially with the video, to most people looking like a cheap 3D rendering. One commenter even pointed out that he's using a phone from our time to show this, rather than some crazy futuristic one. Despite all this though, he took a lie detector test that really put him on the radar, and he passed it with flying colors. What he was saying came out truthfully. But then again, this wasn't done by professionals or with professional equipment, so who's to say if it means it's actually true? The deja vu and parallel universe theory. I had speculated this theory for a few years now, and I'm really happy that other people are discussing it. Majority of us know what deja vu is. A moment in our lives where we get this strange feeling that we've done something like this before. It's French for already seen, and there are some scientific theories for why this happens, such as temporal overlap. This is when the long-term and short-term memories blur together for a moment. Or subconscious familiarity, where your new surroundings have some similarities to an old one. The last being neural delays that create a false feeling that some event has occurred. But I like parallel universes theory better. To explain my favorite version of the theory, a deja vu is when your other self in a different universe and you in this universe accidentally overlap the same timelines. The two of you are living very different experiences, but for some reason we have one, or a few if you're like me, moments in time where the two timelines collide at the exact perfect moment. Our lives perfectly linked up together based on whatever choices we made to get us in that exact same moment of time. I would also love to hear your theories about this down in the comments below. This is a great way to transition into the mirror image universe theory. It could also link to the deja vu theory, but this theory specifically focuses on the moments before the Big Bang, and scientists coming up with a hypothesis that there was a universe completely mirror image to our version today. However, the only difference is that time is moving backwards in that universe. I'm not gonna try and get deep with it, but the basic understanding of this theory is that the Big Bang is the center point of time, and because scientists believe in heavy symmetry within the universe, when it happened, it also created a negative version of time of our universe alongside ours. So, when you think of cracking an egg, what would happen instead in the other universe is that it would start out from the yolk on the ground and turn back into the egg. This theory started back in 2015, when some scientists were up in Antarctica researching high-energy particles. What we did know before is that there are high-energy particles coming towards Earth, which from my understanding is because our universe is constantly expanding outward. However, they discovered high-energy particles going away from our Earth in the opposite direction, as if they were going back in time. There was something pulling or stretching these particles the opposite way, as if the universe is expanding in another direction simultaneously. Let's take a brain breather with some Mandela effects. This one, specifically from Toy Story, is new to me. Do you remember Woody's catchphrase being, "There's a snake in my boot"? Because that's how I remember it, and the majority of people who grew up with it. But we were wrong, because the actual phrase of it goes, "There's a snake in my boots." It was plural, and it was never singular. But of course, the internet didn't agree with this, with the biggest reason being that it grammatically doesn't make sense. The proper sentence should be, "There are snakes in my boots." And it also doesn't help with the fact that the Woody toys that came out all say, "There's a snake in my boot." There was no plural for those. So what gives? There was only one Reddit comment claiming that Pixar confirmed it's always been boot and not boots. But I haven't been able to find an article on that. How do you guys remember it? Tell me down in the comments below. Imagine finding a watch while you're exploring a tomb. Of course, watches have been around for quite a while at this point, but what makes the famous tiny Swiss watch so special? In 2008, archaeologists discovered a remarkable piece of metal that was the size of a ring, bearing the face of a watch that was marked specifically at 10:06. On the back was the word Swiss engraved. This was found in a tomb that had been sealed away for more than 400 years, and yet this watch was only 100 years old. How is that possible? Especially when Switzerland wasn't an established country at the time. The tomb was speculated to have been created during the Ming Dynasty that ruled from 1368 to 1644, and watches were apparently not a thing in that area at the time. My question, however, though, is how sure are we that it was sealed for that long? What are the odds that someone had gone in there prior to the archaeologist, but just decided on not taking or touching anything? It's possible, but then why did they leave the watch ring? People obviously speculate that there were maybe time travelers that left it as a clue for their existence, since many of those already exist across the internet. People love to believe we live in a simulation, with major ones being caught when watching sports. This specific video, uploaded by Highlight Heaven on YouTube, arranged a variety of clips from football that feed into this simulation theory, and there were a few that stuck out to me. The first two clips involve some very synchronized movement of football players getting up. Simultaneously, at the exact same time, their movements are mirrored perfectly, down to the hand placements, to the tempo, you name it. The biggest one that people have their eyes on is when one of the football players does this really weird, almost floating maneuver to get up. They barely use their hands as they hoist themselves from off the ground, as if all their power is coming from the balls of their feet. Sure, they have the momentum of pushing upward, but after that it looks like it's all in the foot power. But I do have a theory for these weird movements, to which I feel many of you have figured out by now. Football players are constantly practicing and drilling in certain movements, right? They've also probably been practicing the quickest and most efficient way of getting up when they get tackled, with one of these ways being the weird floating technique. I'm not a football player, but I've taken movement classes where we are drilled in certain ways of getting up properly and quickly. It's definitely a neat trick that these guys do here, and I can see how it would become an optical illusion at certain angles. The man from Torid. I'm not sure how legit this story is, but still interesting nonetheless. On one sunny day somewhere in July in 1954, an ordinary-looking man arrived at Haneda Airport in Tokyo. There was nothing strange about the way he was dressed, sporting a nice suit and tie with a groomed beard. He was fairly familiar with Japanese, so no red flags thus far. It wasn't until officials noticed on his passport that he was coming from a country called Torid. There is no such thing as Torid, that we're all aware of, and when this man was confronted by police as a possible fraud or threat, he got extremely frustrated and tried to explain that it is in fact real and has been around for 1,000 years. So they got him to try and explain where on the map it was located, and apparently it was supposed to be between Spain and France, but he had no idea why it wasn't showing up on our maps, as he kept repeating he's made multiple trips to Japan before. He even had papers to support his case. However, before they could take a look at them, the man suddenly disappeared from his hotel room, one that was located on the 7th floor with no balcony. The police tried to keep him there while they figured things out, so they had no clue where he went. A lot of people use this theory to support the claims of parallel universes, but I don't know. It sounds a little too good of a story to be true.
Cameron Park in Waco, Texas is known for being one of the creepiest forests in the state. It's got this mix of eerie legends and paranormal activity that gives it a real dark fairy tale kind of vibe. There's remnants of an old abandoned castle here, for example, said to have once been home to a witch. The story goes that an old hag used to live there, practicing dark magic and luring youngsters in to poison them. When the locals found out, they formed a mob and burned her house to the ground. Now her vengeful spirit is said to haunt the ruins, chasing away anyone who dares to get too close. Some say you can even hear the screams of her victims echoing through the forest at night. Another infamous part of the park is referred to as Jacob's Ladder, a massive steep set of stairs that leads through the forest. It's a tough climb, but once you make it to the top, you get some amazing views. The stairs, though, are said to be haunted by a malevolent spirit, said to grab at people's clothes and sometimes pull them down hard enough to tumble down the stairs to their death. It's a massive flat-top mountain sitting right where the borders of Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana meet. It's part of a region known as the Tepuy, which is a collection of isolated flat-topped mountains that just don't look real, at least not like something you'd see here on Earth. Roraima itself is especially fascinating because it rises more than 9,000 feet above the surrounding jungle, and its sheer cliffs make it nearly impossible to climb from the sides. The top of the mountain is covered in mist most of the time, giving it this eerie, almost otherworldly look. As for what's on top, it's almost like an entirely different world. There are these unique species of plants and animals that don't exist anywhere else, and the area has a strange, almost magical feel to it. The isolated environment has led to all kinds of theories about it being a possible doorway to another universe. Some believe that the mountain could be some sort of portal, where the separation from the rest of the world creates a gateway to a parallel reality. Local indigenous tribes have their own legends about the mountain being a place where the gods live, and many have stories of strange events happening around it. Some explorers even report hearing strange noises while they're there. The Devil's Sea, or the Dragon's Triangle, is an area off the coast of Japan, south of Tokyo. It's often compared to the Bermuda Triangle, which is not a good thing. For decades, it's had a reputation for unexplained disappearances, strange weather patterns, and reports of unusual lights in the sky. One of the most famous stories here is the disappearance of the Japanese military vessel Kaio Maru No. 5 in the 50s. The ship, which was conducting research in the area, vanished without a trace, and no wreckage was ever found. There have been other reports of unexplained events too, including ships being found in the wrong locations, crew members mysteriously vanishing, and bizarre compass malfunctions. There's this idea that the Devil's Sea could be a place where time and space don't quite behave the way they should. The idea of a parallel universe or some sort of dimensional rift gets tossed around a lot when people discuss the area. Wycliffe Well is a tiny settlement in the Barkly region of the Northern Territory in Australia. It's about 380 miles north of Alice Springs, and it's known for one thing above all else: UFO sightings. The area only has a handful of permanent residents, but it's become pretty well known as a hotspot for strange activity. People from all over the world come here to visit the Wycliffe Well UFO Center, which displays local reports and stories of alien encounters. For decades, locals and visitors have reported seeing bright lights in the sky, strange flying objects, and mysterious unexplained events happening around the area. The town even calls itself the UFO capital of Australia, and there are signs along the road warning visitors of frequent UFO sightings. But why here? Why this tiny section of Australia? Some believe that there could be some sort of wormhole here, connecting the place to some distant part of space, or maybe even another dimension, with the UFOs acting as the vehicles that travel through them. Wycliffe Well is in the middle of nowhere, too, surrounded by vast desert. The isolation gives the place a certain eerie quality that makes it feel like a place where aliens could roam around undetected. Pyramid Lake in Nevada is a beautiful but eerie spot with a dark history. It's known for its dangerous reputation, and there are all sorts of legends tied to it. The most chilling of these comes from the local Paiute tribe, who speak of the water babies, angry spirits that pull people into the lake, and not for a swim, they kill them. The spirits are said to make these horrid crying and laughing sounds that echo off the lake in the late hours of the night. Over the years, many people have drowned in the lake, and because it's so deep, many of their bodies have never been found. But what's extra strange is the phenomenon of people disappearing in the lake only for their bodies to turn up miles away in Lake Tahoe, about 61 miles away. away. Hard not to wonder if there's something otherworldly going on in these waters. Eternal Flame Falls is a small waterfall in Chestnut Ridge Park in western New York. What makes this waterfall unique is that it has a natural gas leak at its base, which allows a small flame to burn right at the base of the waterfall. The flame is constant, has been burning for as long as people have known about it, making it a fascinating and somewhat surreal sight. The fact that fire and water are so close together, one being fueled by natural gas and the other rushing down a waterfall, it definitely gives it a mysterious, almost otherworldly vibe. There's a strong connection between the flame and the idea of portals to parallel universes because the flame seems to defy natural law. The fire burning in such close proximity to water could be seen as this symbol of two opposing forces existing in the same place. Some people believe that the flame could be a sign of energy leaking from another dimension or reality, making it a potential gateway for forces from another world. But whatever your view is on all that, it is just really cool looking. The Crooked Forest has to be one of the strangest forests on planet Earth. It's famous for its trees, which grow at these odd, almost unnatural angles. Most of the trees in the forest are bent in a distinct J shape, and it's unclear exactly why they grow this way. The odd appearance of the forest has led some to wonder if there's something more going on here than just a weird quirk in nature. Some think that the crookedness of these trees could be the result of magnetic anomalies, or even something more bizarre, like a tear in the fabric of space-time. The forest is relatively small, but the strange shape of the trees gives it a haunting atmosphere. It's easy to see why people think the Crooked Forest could be a gateway to another world or dimension. Salar de Uyuni in southwestern Bolivia is the world's largest salt flat, covering more than 4,000 square miles. First glance, it looks just like this vast, barren wasteland, but it doesn't take long to realize something just feels off about it. It stretches out to the horizon, creating an optical illusion where the sky and ground almost merge together. And when the salt flat is covered with a thin layer of water, it becomes this big, giant mirror, reflecting the sky so perfectly that it can feel like you're standing in the middle of the sky. At least that's what I've heard. I've never been there myself. Certainly looks like it from images though. It's surreal, and it's inspired some to speculate about its connection to parallel universes. The mirror effect especially is often described as looking like a doorway to another dimension. The flatness and emptiness of the place also gives it an almost timeless feel, as if time just doesn't exist in the same way it does in the rest of the world. Some people who have visited this site describe feeling a sense of being outside of normal reality, almost as if they were stepping into a place where the laws of physics don't apply. Mysterious region in Alaska, and it's got quite the reputation. People talk about strange things happening here, like UFO sightings and Bigfoot encounters, tons of Bigfoot encounters. But what really stands out is how many people go missing in the area. The rate of disappearances is nearly double the national average, which is pretty unsettling. Now, part of that is because it's a huge, wild, rugged place with some of the harshest weather on the planet. Even experienced explorers have to be super careful here. There are tons of reports of pilots, hikers, even whole groups disappearing without a trace. On top of that, there are stories of strange magnetic interferences in the area, compasses malfunctioning and making it nearly impossible to navigate. All of this makes the Alaskan Triangle a place full of mystery and danger. Are known for being pretty dangerous, but there's a lot of eerie legends tied to the place as well, probably why it's called the Superstition Mountains. The area is full of deep canyons, steep drop-offs, rough terrain. It makes it a tough place to navigate even for experienced hikers. Over the years, more hikers have gone missing in these mountains than in any other range in the United States, about 5 a year. But it's not just the wild terrain that makes the place dangerous. The Superstition Mountains are full of legends, all of them ending in tragedy pretty much. Supposedly, there's treasure hidden somewhere here by a man who's become known as the Lost Dutchman. People have been trying to find this treasure for centuries, and many have died doing so. Probably the most gruesome part are the reports of bodies being found without heads. Sometimes the heads are found, just not anywhere close to the rest of the body. Jim Kaller, an astronomer at the University of Illinois, explains that the double sun is likely an optical refraction, but he calls it a, quote, pretty darn rare one, and admits that it's not fully explained by science, saying, "I doubt it's been computer modeled. There must have been some blob of atmosphere somewhere that caused this truly spectacular phenomenon, which in a sense is a mirage," end quote. Now, typically mirages happen when particles in the air bend light, but they're usually vertically aligned with the light source, not side by side like this double sun effect sometimes is. Kaller thinks that it could be a thick patch of atmosphere moving in front of the sun. There's even a historical reference to this in a book called Light and Color in the Outdoors by Flemish astronomer Marcel Meniert. He describes double sun phenomena in such detail that it almost matches the modern sightings. He wrote, "So many other instances have been reported that there is no longer any doubt about observations of sun and mock suns being at exactly the same altitude." But even with all this, experts still aren't sure what exactly causes this effect. Grant Perry, an atmospheric scientist, said, "This is not a common optical phenomenon that we're seeing here. It's definitely one of those effects that leaves you wondering, could we be seeing something more than just an optical illusion?" Imagine for a minute, if you will, that you've just died in a freak accident. Suddenly you open your eyes and an entity is standing over you explaining that you're dead, but has given you the opportunity to travel back in time to a universe running parallel to your own in order to save yourself from dying. Of course, what I've just outlined here is complete fantasy, but many people have watched this video here and conjured up similar ideas and stories. In this CCTV footage, we see two men walking down the street at night. Two men who look pretty similar, mind you, both wearing dark clothing, both around the same height, same male pattern baldness. Now the man trailing behind catches up to the dude in front and taps him on the shoulder just as a car passes, and then out of nowhere, this metal object swings out just in time for the guy to jump out of the way. If he hadn't received that warning tap on the shoulder, the thing would have plowed right into him. Now, there's a lot to unpack with this video. First of all, and what most people point out immediately about this video, is the fact that the guy who gives the warning tap seems to know what's about to happen. He doesn't look back and react like, "Oh God, we're about to be hit, I better warn this guy." No, he doesn't even seem concerned with his own safety at all. He just is always looking forward, taps the guy, totally calm, almost as if he's experienced this before. He also doesn't stick around, doesn't look at the guy directly, just taps him and then moves on, almost like he doesn't want to be seen. But why wouldn't he want the other guy to see his face? Why the hurry to get away? Well, the fun theory, of course, that started to spread online is that the dude who gave the tap is a time traveler, possibly even a future version of the dude who nearly got hit. Now, is this the only explanation? Well, of course not, but it's a fun idea, and I think there's enough strangeness about this video that it's not easy to chalk up to mere coincidence. Even if there's nothing extraordinary about this video, it's pretty miraculous how this man was mere inches from death. The multiverse theory may actually have some observational science evidence behind it. Scientists at the European Space Agency Planck Orbital Observatory have been studying something called CMB, or cosmic microwave background radiation. This radiation is left over from the early super hot stages of our universe. Now, back in 2010, a team from the UK, Canada, and the US discovered 4 strange circular patterns in the CMB. It's not clear what these patterns mean, but one cool idea is that they could be the result of our universe bumping into another one. In 2015, another scientist at the European Space Agency, Rand Ramchari, made a similar discovery. He took a model of the CMB and removed everything we know, like stars, gas, and dust, and expected the image to be pretty much blank. But when he did that, it wasn't blank at all. Chari found areas of the sky that were 4,500 times brighter than they should have been. His theory, those light patches could be imprints from a collision between our universe and another one. Let's talk about one of the most talked about photographs of all time, at least when it comes to the strange and unexplained. In 1941, a photo was snapped at the reopening of the South Fork Bridge in Goldbridge, British Columbia. At first glance, this looks like your typical historical photo. It's black and white. People are dressed in 1940s, clothes, old school cameras, all that stuff. But wait, there's one guy in the photo who immediately catches your eye. He's wearing more modern looking sunglasses, a printed t-shirt, and holding what looks like a camera that's too small for the time. People online have gone wild with the idea that this guy was a time traveler who slipped into the past wearing clothes from the future. A hipster from today somehow stuck in the middle of a 1940s photo. A pretty wild and far-fetched idea, and of course some people have tried to debunk this one, saying the sunglasses were actually a style from the 1920s. The printed t-shirt, well, on closer look, turns out it's just a sweater with a sports emblem on it. As for his camera, it was smaller than most, but portable cameras did exist back then. Boring, right? Well, sure, maybe all of that makes sense, but it doesn't stop people from wondering. Cause the guy does just stick out like a sore thumb, and at the end of the day, there's no way we can really know for sure. And that's not the only supposed time traveler captured on camera. There's also the story of Chaplin's time traveler. Take a look at this video here and see if you can spot anything odd, aside from the zebra statue. Yeah, see the woman walking in the background? Looks like she's holding something to her ear, right? Almost like a cell phone. Now, it's easy to look past this. I mean, cell phones are so common now that they almost seem like extensions of our bodies. But yeah, people didn't have cell phones back in the 1920s, in case you didn't know. Back in October of 2010, a filmmaker named George Clark uploaded a clip to YouTube titled Chaplin's Time Traveler. In the video, he's analyzing a bonus feature from the 1928 Charlie Chaplin movie, The Circus. The clip shows footage from the movie's Los Angeles premiere, and if you look closely, there's that woman walking by holding what appears to be a strange device to her ear. Clark thought she was talking into a mobile phone, something that definitely wouldn't have existed in 1928. So it got people talking. Was this footage of a time traveler? Had this woman slipped into an alternate timeline from the future? Well, it's probably exactly what happened, but some people have some other more out there ideas. Nicholas Jackson, for example, an associate editor at The Atlantic, pointed out that the woman could have just been using a portable hearing aid. This was a very new piece of technology at the time, so it wasn't common to see, but it is possible. But, I mean, isn't time travel, or the idea that this was a woman crossed over from another reality, more plausible to you than an old-timey hearing aid? Well, we're finally here. I've done videos on the channel before talking about the Mandela effect without ever directly discussing one of the most famous of all time, the Darth Vader "Luke, I am your father" line. While considering James Earl Jones just recently passed away, and the title of the video being Parallel Universes Captured on Camera, I thought I'd give my 2 cents on this one. According to huge swaths of the population, the version of Star Wars we watch now is not the one we remember, and I'm not talking about all the George Lucas edits. This goes deeper, almost like the version we watched when we were young was from some alternate universe, or we've all slipped into an alternate universe ourselves. At least those of us that remember the line being "Luke, I am your father," and not just "No, I am your father." Considering this is one of the most famous movie moments in history, it really is strange how often people would get this wrong. Every Vader impression at recess began with "Luke." Parodies would get the line wrong. One that sticks out to me is in Toy Story 2 with Zurg's line, "No, Buzz, I am your father." So what's going on here? Are a bunch of us simply misremembering the line, or have we all really slipped into a galaxy far, far away? So this video was posted to Reddit by user Upstairs Cash 8400, and it's pretty bizarre. At first it just looks like an empty street with a bird in the sky until you realize that that bird's not moving. Then things get even stranger when we see a mother and son both looking up at the bird, completely confused about what they're seeing. So this is not just a glitch in the video. Now, sure, they could be part of a hoax, but if they are, they do a pretty good job of acting it out. What makes this so weird is that there's nothing behind the bird. It's just open air. It's not near a building. It's not like it could be a sculpture or something. It's just hovering. No strings, nothing. Definitely a bizarre one. And finally, we have the WOW signal. This mysterious radio signal was picked up in 1977 by an Ohio State University radio telescope, lasting just 72 seconds. It got its name from astronomer Jerry R. Amon, who wrote "WOW" next to the data printout. The signal's frequency and intensity were unlike anything we've seen from natural sources, leading some to speculate that it could have come from extraterrestrial life. But there's another theory that it might have come from a parallel universe. Something, whatever created this signal, could have dipped into a black hole and is now in a completely different universe. Of course, less exciting explanations like a passing comet or space debris haven't been ruled out either. While there's no definitive proof of anything, it's definitely worth checking out the recording. It's pretty spooky sounding. The Large Hadron Collider, or the LHC, is one of the most impressive scientific machines ever built, designed by the European Organization for Nuclear Research to smash particles together at near light speeds, because why not? But for all its scientific greatness, there are a lot of conspiracies surrounding it. That the LHC can create black holes or open portals to other dimensions. People have even talked about the possibility of the thing accidentally ripping a hole in our reality and letting something from another universe slip through. One of the more popular conspiracy theories is that CERN, or CERN, is trying to open a gateway to another dimension. The idea is that by colliding particles at such high speeds, they could create a rift in spacetime, allowing access to parallel universes. There's also a theory that CERN is trying to contact alien beings or gods from these other dimensions, and that the machine's true purpose is far more sinister than just smashing atoms, which is already pretty nuts as it is. Now, none of these theories have any real scientific backing. The scientists at CERN have repeatedly told the public that the LHC is safe and that it can't create black holes or tear open the fabric of the universe. But to be fair to the conspiracy theorists out there, I mean, they would say that, wouldn't they? Who's gonna come out and tell the public, like, yep, oh yeah, we've been just trying to open a gateway to another dimension and make contact with entities in other realms. Don't mind us. Keep giving us your tax dollars, please. The Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or AATIP, operated from 2007 to 2012. It was a top secret government unit tasked with investigating UFOs. Now, a few years back, a series of AATIP documents were declassified. Apparently, they'd also been looking into invisibility cloaking, anti-gravity technology, wormholes, and even extra dimensions. Nick Pope, who used to head up the British government's UFO research, got his hands on some of the documents related to AATIP. The exact nature of their work is still a bit of a mystery, but what's clear is that they were looking into some really strange technology. Serious research was being done on things that could potentially bend the laws of physics as we know them. What's even more interesting is the connection to UFOs. The Pentagon confirmed that AATIP investigated footage of Navy pilots encountering a strange glowing object near San Diego. The object rotated and had a mysterious aura around it, and no one's been able to explain what it was. Now, when the AATIP claimed that they looked at UFOs as less of a possible alien threat and more of a foreign threat, that other countries could be developing technology far ahead of the US, UFO does just mean unidentified flying object after all, but Nick Pope thinks that maybe AATIP may have known more than what they were letting on, and that the talk about foreign advanced aerospace threats was just a cover. If they really were delving into things like wormholes and extra dimensions, could they have been trying to figure out how UFOs move the way they do by bending space and time? Were they exploring technologies that could open doorways to parallel realities? The Avro Canada VZ9 Avrocar was a real project that almost sounds too crazy to be true, an attempt to build a real flying saucer. Back in the 50s, during the height of the Cold War, the US military was trying to find new ways to get the upper hand, and that included experimenting with some pretty wild ideas. The Avrocar, which was developed by Canadian aircraft manufacturing company Avro Canada, was one of those ideas. It was supposed to be a vertical takeoff and landing, or VTOL, aircraft that looked just like the UFOs seen in countless B movies at the time. The idea was that this flying saucer could hover like a helicopter, but fly like a plane. It didn't work out. The Avrocar had all sorts of problems, mainly with stability and speed. When they tested it, the thing could barely get off the ground, and when it did, it was wobbly and hard to control. By 1961, the project was scrapped. But maybe that's not where the story ends. Some conspiracy theorists believe that the Avrocar was just the public face of a much deeper, secretive project, and that the military continued working on flying saucer technology in secret. Some think that the US military may have actually succeeded in creating an advanced flying saucer. Project Mannequin is said to be a secret program run by the British and US government, focusing on creating super soldiers. According to the theory, Project Mannequin involved serious experiments on human subjects, trying to enhance physical and mental abilities using advanced technology, even tapping into other dimensions. The idea behind this project is that the government was, or possibly still is, trying to create soldiers who could do what no normal person can. Enhance strength, telepathy, and even the ability to manipulate time and space. And how is this achieved? Well, through alien technology recovered from UFOs. Now, some whistleblowers, and yes, there are actually people who have come out claiming to have been part of this project, well, they say that Project Mannequin was involved in experiments with time travel and parallel universes. The claim is that by understanding how different dimensions work, the government could train soldiers to move between these realities, giving them a huge tactical advantage. After World War II, the US government secretly brought over more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians to work on American projects. The thing is, many of these scientists had worked for the Third Reich, and some were even members of that party. This isn't a conspiracy, this actually was a thing. The US was in such a rush to get ahead of the Soviet Union in the Cold War that they didn't care. They thought these scientists were going to give them the edge in all sorts of scientific fields, mainly when it came to rocket technology. One of the most famous scientists brought over was Wernher von Braun, who had been heavily involved in the Third Reich's rocket program and later played a major role in the US space program. But was there more to Operation Paperclip than your more conventional scientific pursuits? There have always been rumors that these scientists were also involved in more controversial research, like work in mind control, psychological warfare, and possibly even experiments related to alternate dimensions and parallel realities. The High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or HAARP, was and is very controversial to this day. Officially, HAARP was a research program in Alaska designed to study the ionosphere. It used a huge array of antennas to send high-frequency radio waves into the ionosphere. Scientists hoped this research could help improve communication systems, navigation, and weather prediction, but there were a lot of people who were highly skeptical about this. HAARP became a target for tons of conspiracy theories, mainly that it was a secret government project designed to control the weather, cause earthquakes, or even manipulate people's minds. Others took it a step further even, suggesting that HAARP was being used to open portals to other dimensions or parallel realities. The idea behind these theories is that by bombarding the ionosphere with radio waves, HAARP could somehow tear open the fabric of space-time or create wormholes that connect our world to alternate realities. Some theorists believe that HAARP was trying to tap into these other dimensions for military reasons, maybe to gain access to advanced technology or even to communicate with beings from other realities. I mean, if you're dipping into other realities and tearing into them, why not talk to the people there? You'd probably have a lot of questions to answer for them. The Montauk Project, a supposedly top-secret government program that may or may not have been part of the inspiration for Stranger Things. It's said that this project took place at Camp Hero, an old Air Force base in Montauk, New York. After the success of the Philadelphia experiment, which allegedly involved making a naval ship invisible and accidentally teleporting it, the US government decided that they were going to try to push the boundaries even further. The Montauk Project worked in advanced psychological warfare techniques, mind control experiments, and the creation of a time portal, supposedly. The project supposedly involved abducting young people and using them in these experiments with the goal of harnessing psychic abilities for the military. Some stories even go that the project managed to open portals to other dimensions, allowing beings from alternate realities to enter into ours. According to some conspiracy theorists, these experiments were so dangerous that they eventually had to be shut down, with the base's records and evidence erased or buried deep in classified government files. Project Looking Glass is a conspiracy theory that the government developed technology capable of seeing into the future and even observing events in parallel realities. Supposedly, the project was part of a bigger effort by the government to understand and possibly manipulate time and reality itself. The technology, often described as a device or machine, allowed users to peer into different timelines or dimensions, giving them glimpses of potential futures or alternate versions of reality. And by observing these different realities, the government could predict events before they happened and influence the course of history. And they're kind of like Paul Atreides and Dune. Some versions of the theory claim that the device could even allow people to travel between these alternate realities. Imagine being able to see how different decisions would play out across different timelines, or accessing advanced technology from a parallel universe. I mean, why wouldn't you do it? Project Pegasus. This is a lesser known but highly intriguing conspiracy theory which involves time travel and teleportation experiments supposedly conducted by the US government in the 60s and 70s. Now, according to those who believe in the project, it was part of a secret program under DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, aimed at developing technology for time travel and interdimensional exploration. A lawyer named Andrew Basiago from Vancouver, Washington, claims to have been a participant in these experiments when he was little. He stated that the government had successfully developed time travel technology using a device based on the work of Nikola Tesla. This device was known as a chronovisor, supposedly allowing participants to travel back and forth in time and even visit alternate realities. He said he was sent on multiple missions, including a trip to witness the Gettysburg Address and a visit to the future to gather information for the government. He also said a young Barack Obama joined him on some of his adventures. The Stargate Project. Now, unlike some of the projects I've talked about on this list that are more conspiratorial and may or may not have actually existed, Project Stargate really did. It's more of a question as to whether or not anything actually came of it. The US government ran this program from 1977 to 1995, and the purpose behind it? To explore the potential of psychic phenomena for military and intelligence purposes. Yeah, the Montauk Project's not really sounding all that crazy now, is it? Stargate was specifically interested in what was referred to as remote viewing, the ability to see or describe places, people, or events without actually being physically present there. The CIA, along with other military and intelligence agencies, funded and ran these experiments, often working with people who claimed to have psychic abilities. They figured that if they could train people to accurately see distant locations or predict events, it could be a powerful tool for espionage and warfare, which, it certainly would be. In 1995, though, the project was terminated, at least officially. The story is that Project Stargate was ineffective, not reliable enough for practical use, but some believe the government actually continued the research in secret. After all, if even a fraction of the remote viewing claims were accurate, it would be a game changer for military operations. So let's start things off with ghosts. You probably didn't think I'd be starting off like this, but I think you could make a pretty good argument for paranormal stuff like this being a sign of possible parallel universe. Almost all of us have heard someone's first-hand account of having seen something, or feeling cold spots, hearing noises that don't seem to have a logical explanation. The usual explanation, aside from the ones made by skeptics, is that these are signs of hauntings, usually a dead person who's not able to fully cross over to the other side, so they remain in this limbo between the world of the living and the dead, tied to the places they once called home. But what if these so-called ghosts aren't actually spirits or souls, but glimpses into another universe? What if what we interpret as paranormal activity could be caused by parallel universes overlapping? Imagine it like looking through a frosted window. You can see movement on the other side, shadows and shapes, but they're not really there in the way we understand it. Maybe at times in certain places, the line between dimensions gets a little fuzzy. and you catch a brief glance into a parallel world. Instead of a ghost haunting you, maybe it's just a glimpse of someone from a different version of reality. Next, we've got time slips. Ever had a moment where you're sure you were somewhere but everyone else insists you weren't, or vice versa? Now, if this happens to you a lot, definitely see a doctor before chalking it up to what some idiot online like me says, but if you've been cleared of any early signs of dementia, then maybe something stranger could be going on. Some people think these experiences could be linked to parallel universes, the idea being that we can sometimes slip between timelines. One minute you could be at a party, the next you're back home, but with no memory of how you got there. Or you might be walking down a street and suddenly the surroundings look completely different, like you've been dropped into a past version of your city. This sounds pretty ridiculous, and I can't say that I've ever experienced anything like this, but some people say they have. You can find stories like this all over places like Reddit. Not that you should believe everything you read online, but even if a small handful of these stories happen to be true, that is pretty strange. Some people think time slips could happen when two timelines briefly overlap, and your consciousness gets caught in this switch. You're still you, but somehow you're seeing a different version of events, like a time traveler who doesn't even know that they're time traveling. Now let's talk about something a bit more sciencey, quantum entanglement. This is a phenomenon where two particles become linked in such a way that when something happens to one, the other is instantly affected, no matter how far apart they are. Yes, this really does happen, despite the fact that what I just described doesn't seem to follow the rules of space and time. It's as if the particles are somehow aware of each other across these vast distances. We still don't know exactly why this happens, and if you wanted to make the argument, which I am, it could possibly point to, at the very least, a glitch in the Matrix, similar to the parallel universes theory. A glitch in the Matrix meaning that the world around us is an illusion created by who knows what. Point is, our universe may just be one of many. Could we exist in this complex web of overlapping universes where every now and then one of the strands twitches in a way we don't understand, causing a mysterious and unexplainable phenomena like this? Alright, let's talk deja vu. Sure, this gets talked about a lot, but for good reason. It's pretty disconcerting. Every time it happens, it throws me off. I'm always left with this uneasy, existential dread for about 30 seconds before I get on with my day, but it's this brief reminder that despite everything science tells us, and as clear as the world seems at face value, there are a lot of things we just don't understand. It's eerie, but kind of humbling. How can we be experiencing a sequence of events so specific that we logically know that it's the first time we've lived it, and yet somehow there's this feeling in the pit of our stomach that, no, we've been here before, seen this play out. It's not a memory, more like something you've seen in a dream, maybe? It's vivid yet hazy at the same time. There are tons of theories on deja vu. One being that you have lived the exact moment, but in a different life. That time either runs in a constant loop, or a parallel universe running right along our own briefly overlaps and gives us that strange, uncanny feeling. Think of it like your brain momentarily accessing memories from a different version of yourself, one who's living a slightly different life, but maybe in this other version you did something exactly like what you're doing right now, and for a split second your brain glitches and pulls that memory into the current moment. You're living in the present moment, but your mind receives a kind of signal from a different timeline. So I mentioned glitches in the Matrix a bit earlier, so I want to go into more detail on that. This one is very popular online. Glitches in the Matrix are when people claim to experience weird moments where reality seems to glitch out. Like say you notice what looks to be the same person walking by twice in a row, or objects appearing or disappearing out of nowhere. Just weird stuff like that. Almost like a video game that's failing to render things correctly. The idea here is that we could be living in a simulation, and every so often, the code that runs the simulation gets a little wonky. But to take it a step further, what if those glitches aren't just errors in a simulation, but signs that our universe is brushing up against another one? In theory, if parallel universes do exist, we could occasionally get a peek into them or experience moments where the fabric of space-time bends. Could be as simple as noticing a repeating pattern in your day, but your brain can't quite reconcile with what you know of reality. It's like your system glitches out because it's trying to process something from another universe that doesn't quite match up with your version. The experience of missing time. This one is a classic, especially when it comes to UFOs. There are tons of stories and cases of people driving around a desolate road late at night when they see a strange light in the sky, and then all of a sudden, hours, or sometimes even days have passed that they just have no recollection of. Missing time. Could this phenomenon be connected to parallel universes? Well, the theory is that these abductees may have actually slipped into another timeline. As for whether aliens are involved or not, who knows? Point is, something could shift in the fabric of space-time and your consciousness jumps into a new version of reality, leaving this gap in your memories. It's not so much that time was stolen from you, it's more like you temporarily just moved into another timeline, and when you returned to your own, it felt like you lost those hours. Quantum tunneling is a very bizarre phenomenon where particles can move through barriers that should, according to physics, be impossible. Picture it like a ball traveling through a solid wall instead of bouncing off it. Yes, this does happen, but the science is very hard to explain. Again though, parallel universes, could they play into this? Could particles be tunneling from one reality to another? Instead of just interacting with the particles in our universe, these particles might slip through some sort of portal into another reality. This could help explain some of the bizarre stuff we see in our world that doesn't really make sense. Random moments where the laws of physics seem to just not apply. When it comes to parallel universes, the rules we know might not work the same way, and particles that can tunnel through different dimensions, well, that could be the key to how those universes are crossing paths, even if we don't always notice. Alright, let's switch gears, head up into space. We've got all kinds of mysterious things out there. Strange lights, unexplained radio signals, objects that don't behave how we expect them to. Of course, you know where I'm going with this one, but even some scientists wonder if some of these things could be evidence of parallel universes. Take the WOW signal, for example, an unexplained radio signal detected by astronomers back in 1977 that lasted for about 72 seconds and then disappeared. No one knows where it came from or what caused it. Some think it could have come from a parallel universe, trying to communicate with ours. And yes, it sounds pretty far-fetched, and maybe it is. Maybe there's a much more mundane explanation, but also consider just how vast and mysterious space is, and how little we really understand of it. Looking at it that way, the possibility of another universe interacting with ours in some way seems pretty plausible. Every so often we hear about things that seem to appear out of nowhere. Like maybe you're in your living room, you find a book on your coffee table that you're pretty sure you didn't buy, or maybe you swear you put your keys in one place but you find them sitting in a completely different spot and no one moved them. Or the reverse, objects just disappear without a trace. Can most situations like this be chalked up to our brains just sucking at remembering things sometimes? Sure, but could there also be something else going on in very rare cases? One theory is that this could be the result of objects slipping in and out of parallel universes. Say you leave your socks sitting on the edge of your bed, but when you turn around to grab them, they're nowhere to be found. So you look all over your room only to find that they're actually sitting on your bathroom counter. What if they were simply sucked into another version of reality for a while? Maybe it was in a parallel universe for a second, but when the reality shift happens, it comes back, just not in the same place you left them. Mandela effect. A phenomenon where a large group of people remember something in a certain way only to find out that it never actually happened that way at all. I think what's so interesting about this one is that unlike stuff like deja vu or objects going missing, situations that are a lot more likely to happen in isolation, Mandela effects are corroborated by mass amounts of people. For some context, the name Mandela effect comes from people remembering Nelson Mandela dying in the 80s, when in fact he passed away in 2013. Some people think this is a glitch in our collective memory. Like we've all tapped into a parallel universe where things happen just slightly differently. The list of famous Mandela effects is huge and just continues to grow. From the famous Bernstein Bears versus Bernstein Bears confusion to the misremembered lines from famous movies like Star Wars and Forrest Gump. It's almost like there is a version of reality that some people are still hanging on to, still remembering, even though it never actually existed in our timeline. Again, are these just examples of our collective memory not being the most reliable, or could we just possibly be momentarily connecting to another universe where things unfolded just slightly differently. Starting off the list with the bubble universes theory. So imagine the universe right after the Big Bang, acting kind of like a giant balloon, rapidly inflating. This is the main concept of the cosmic inflation theory. According to this theory, the early universe expanded extremely quickly. Now here's where it gets kind of interesting. Picture this rapid expansion like different regions of the balloon inflating at their own speeds. In some areas, inflation happens a bit faster, in others, it's a bit slower. This creates pockets or bubbles within this expanding universe, kind of like different regions on the surface of the inflating balloon. In each of these bubbles, a unique set of physical laws and conditions takes shape. Each bubble becomes its own little universe with its own rules of how things work, its own arrangement of matter, energy, and who knows what else. Next up, we have cold spots. So imagine you're an astrophysicist looking at the vastness of space. Back in 2015, scientists in Hawaii noticed something strange, a huge empty patch where there should have been 10,000 galaxies. They called it a cold spot because it seemed like everything there had just vanished. Now, scientists at Durham University came up with a pretty fascinating idea about this mysterious cold spot. They think it might be because our universe collided with another universe, almost like two giant soap bubbles bumping into one another. When these universes collide, it could push all the energy and stuff out of a specific area, creating a big empty space, the cold spot. We might be living in one bubble universe out of trillions, and this cold spot could be the aftermath of a collision with another bubble universe. It's a bit like when two ripples in a pond meet and create a calm spot in the water. Alright, now this one is pretty cool, even though it has math in the title. It's the mathematical multiverse theory. This idea centers around the concept that our entire universe is like a giant cosmic equation, and every bit of it, from tiny particles to vast galaxies, can be described and understood using math. Understood by other people and not by me, because math was just... I get sick even just saying the word. That's the core idea, though, behind the mathematical universe theory. This theory suggests that there are countless mathematical structures, and each one represents a different universe. Since there are infinite mathematical possibilities, this would also mean, in theory, an infinite number of universes. So think of it a bit like this. Our universe is just one solution to the grand mathematical equation that is existence. In this mathematical multiverse, each universe has its own unique set of rules and conditions, an infinite collection of parallel universes where physics and math can be totally different from what we know. For instance, one example I tend to use, in one universe, gravity might act in a way that pulls things sideways, while in another, it might pull things up. If you're unaware, our gravity pulls us down, but the possibilities are really endless in this theory. Next on the list, of course, black holes. I mean, we gotta talk about black holes in a video like this. Black holes are mysterious regions in space where gravity is so strong that nothing, even light, can escape their gravitational pull. In the traditional understanding, once something crosses the event horizon of a black hole, it seemingly is just gone forever, lost to the singularity at the center. But some physicists have a different idea that black holes could lead to parallel universes. It's called the wormhole hypothesis. This idea here is that a black hole could potentially connect to a white hole or another region of space-time through a tunnel-like structure called a wormhole. A white hole is a hypothetical region where matter and light are ejected, basically the opposite of a black hole. I mean, really, that is the opposite. So instead of being forever stuck inside the black hole, the matter and information falling into a black hole might be transferred through a wormhole to another region of space, or even a completely separate universe, almost acting like a bridge between our universe and a parallel one. All right, the simulated multiverse theory. The simulated multiverse theory suggests that our entire universe is basically a massive computer simulation. Imagine our reality being like a highly advanced video game or computer program that we're just unknowingly living inside of, and everything we experience is generated by some incredibly powerful computer. Now, who could be the ones running this simulation? It could be extraterrestrial beings with highly advanced technology, or even humans from the far future running a simulation to learn about their own ancestry, like a gigantic virtual reality experiment. But if our universe is just one big simulation, there could be countless other simulations running simultaneously, each representing a separate universe with its own unique set of rules. Basically, it's just a bunch of alien children learning about us, and they're all just in their own little screens watching different versions of it. Next, we have the string theory multiverse. So scientists have a theory called string theory. Instead of thinking of particles as tiny dots, they imagine them as super tiny vibrating strings. So string theory says that there are more than just the usual 3 dimensions of space and of time that we're used to. Imagine there are extra dimensions, but they're so tiny and curled up that we can't see them in our everyday lives. Mathematicians call these curled up dimensions Calabi-Yau manifolds, which are basically complex shapes used to describe these hidden dimensions. In the world of string theory, these extra dimensions can have different configurations or setups, kind of like multiple radio stations, each playing a different song. In this case, each configuration could represent a different set of physical laws and constants, the rules that govern how things work in our universe. Our universe, in this grand scheme of things, is like tuning into one specific radio station. But according to the string theory multiverse idea, there are countless other stations out there, each playing its own unique tune, or each representing a different universe. So why does our universe have the particular rules that it does? The string theory multiverse brings in something called the anthropic principle. The principle says that the reason our universe has the specific laws it does is because those laws allow for the existence of life. If things were different, we wouldn't be here to even ponder it. Our next sciencey theory on the list is quantum entanglement. So let's imagine we have 2 particles. We'll call these particle A and particle B, and these 2 particles become entangled. This means that they're somehow connected in a way that the state of one particle instantly influences the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. This actually happens. This is very strange because in our everyday understanding of the world, information can't travel faster than the speed of light. But with entanglement, changes in one particle's state seems to happen instantaneously in the other, even if they're light years apart. So how does this relate to the possibility of parallel universes? Well, one idea is that the particles exist in multiple states at the same time until we observe them. And when we observe one particle, it instantly affects the other particle's state, no matter the distance. Some scientists speculate that when we observe one particle and it chooses a particular state, the other particle might be choosing a different state in a parallel universe. Pretty hard to wrap your head around, but alright, this next one is also pretty trippy. See if you can wrap your head around this, because I have a hard time doing so, but the holographic multiverse theory. So for this, we need to imagine that our universe is like a giant 3D movie being projected onto a screen, and that all of that information making up this cosmic movie projection is actually encoded on the surface of that screen. In simple terms, the holographic principle is based on the idea that the information needed to describe a 3-dimensional structure like our universe can be represented in a 2-dimensional way, like a hologram. So essentially, all the details of a 3D object are somehow encoded on a flat surface. So some scientists have suggested that our universe, as we perceive it, might actually be this holographic projection, and this would mean that everything we see around us might be a kind of illusion, and the real action is happening on the screen, or the boundary of our universe. So instead of thinking of separate universes with different physical laws, the holographic multiverse suggests that all these universes, including ours, might be interconnected holographic projections. Each quote-unquote projection could represent a different set of physical laws, making it seem like its own distinct universe. This would be like having multiple TV screens, each showing a different channel. These channels, or universes, might seem independent, but the information that creates them is all encoded on the same screen. Next, we have probably the most mysterious radio signal ever ever detected, simply known as the WOW signal. So in 1977, the Ohio State University's radio telescope received a very odd radio signal from outer space that lasted for about 72 seconds. The signal was so unique and unexpected that astronomer Jerry R. Eyman, who was reviewing the data printout, circled the signal and just wrote WOW next to it, hence giving it that name. What made the WOW signal particularly intriguing was its frequency and intensity, which didn't match any known natural source. So what was it? Well, aliens, of course, have always been brought into the conversation, but there's also the idea that the signal might be connected to parallel universes. The signal's characteristics were so unusual that some have suggested it could be a form of communication or energy transmission from a parallel universe. Lastly, we have Deja Vu. Now, this one is a bit different than everything else on this list in that it's a phenomenon we all experience relatively frequently that science hasn't been able to give a convincing explanation for, and that's led to a lot of fascinating ideas as to why it happens, including, of course, the existence of parallel universes. I say science hasn't been able to come up with a convincing explanation because, I'm sorry, but no, I do not buy that deja vu is just experiencing something similar to something you've experienced before. That is just the lamest explanation, and it seems to be the only one that the scientific world can come up with. Like, you know what we experience that's very similar day to day? Going to work, waking up, eating foods we've had before, kissing our partner if we're lucky enough to have one. Most of our lives are pretty repetitive day to day, but like, we're not experiencing deja vu on a constant basis. When it pops up, it's noticeable, uncanny to an eerie degree. So what's going on here? Well, one idea is that two parallel universes perfectly line up for a brief moment, and a version of yourself from a parallel universe is in the same exact situation, performing the exact same action at the same time as you. Thus, you get that odd feeling like you've done this before. In 1851, a man calling himself Jopar Voren was picked up by local authorities in the town of Frankfurt Oder, in what was then Prussia. He didn't speak German fluently, but he understood it well enough to communicate, and what he told them left everyone confused. He claimed to be from a country called Luxaria, which he said was in a region called Sacria, supposedly somewhere in the Eastern Hemisphere. Never heard of it? Well, yeah, nobody else did either. It wasn't on any map, it wasn't part of any empire, and it never has been. It didn't exist. But Jopar was dead serious. He said he was searching for his long-lost brother, and when asked to show his documents, he produced papers written in a completely unknown language. He also claimed to be fluent in multiple languages, some of which had no record of ever existing either, like Luxarian and Abramian. Eventually, authorities labeled him a lunatic and sent him off for further investigation, and that's the last the world ever heard of him. There was never any follow-up. If this guy ever really did exist, he probably ended up in an asylum, and if you know anything about mental institutions at the time, you know they were basically hell on earth. Makes sense he was never heard from again. Was this guy mentally unstable though, or is there really a chance that he somehow slipped from an alternate reality, a different version of Earth where Luxaria was as real as Germany? And in this alternate Earth, is there a more handsome version of me doing a video just like this, but talking about how Jopar Voren mysteriously vanished into thin air and was never seen again? In the heart of Liverpool, there's a street called Bold Street. Nothing crazy at first glance, just shops, cafes, people going about their day, but ask around and you'll likely hear whispers about something very strange. People slipping through time. One of the most famous stories comes from 1996. A guy named Frank was walking with his wife near Bold Street. She popped into a bookstore and he strolled ahead to a music shop. As he crossed the street, everything suddenly changed. Modern cars vanished, the noises around him dulled, and when he looked around, he was standing in what looked like 1950s Liverpool. People were dressed in post-war clothes, and there were old-school shop fronts where modern businesses should have been. He even saw a store called Crips, which hadn't existed in decades. A few moments later, the world flickered again, and he was back in the present like nothing had happened. Frank swore that this happened though, and he's not the only one. There are dozens of reports from people who say they've walked Bold Street and wound up in the past, some just for a few seconds, others for minutes. Is it just a coincidence, hallucinations, or is Bold Street sitting on some kind of weird wrinkle in time, a natural glitch in the matrix, if you will? In 1979, two British couples, Geoff and Pauline Simpson and Len and Cynthia Gisby, were driving through France on their way to a holiday in Spain. While passing through Paris, they decided to stop for the night. They pulled off the main road and found this charming, old-fashioned hotel. Nothing fancy, but it was cozy and heavy wooden furniture. No modern conveniences though, like none. The beds didn't have pillows even, it was just bolsters. The windows had these old wooden shutters, odd but charming in a vintage kind of way. They even had dinner at the attached restaurant, where they were served a very basic, kind of old school meal by staff in these outdated uniforms. The whole night also only cost them about 19 francs total. That's about $21.50 US. Even in the 70s, that was suspiciously cheap. They tried to find the hotel again on their way back through Paris, but it was gone completely. They retraced their route. They asked locals. Nobody had ever heard of this place though. The road they remembered taking didn't seem to exist anymore. They later checked their photos from the trip, but the ones they took of the hotel were gone. They just weren't there. But both couples swore up and down that this was real. So did they spend the night in a building that slipped forward through time, or did they slip backward into some echo of a Paris that no longer was there? In 2009, a guy named James Richards claimed he had a very weird experience in California. According to him, he was out driving near Del Porto Canyon with his dog when it took off chasing a rabbit. He ran after it, tripped, hit his head, and blacked out. When he came to, he was in what looked like a regular room with furniture, but there were also machines he didn't recognize. A man introduced himself as Jonas and said that while on a work-related trip from a dimensional travel agency, he had used the machine to transport the unconscious Richards to this parallel Earth in order to help him. This alternate version of Earth was very similar to ours, but with some key differences. One being that in Jonas's world, the Beatles were all still alive and making music. Naturally, James didn't believe it until Jonas gave him a cassette tape. The label said Everyday Chemistry was a compilation of Beatles songs that didn't exist here. James brought the tape back with him when he returned to our world, and he posted the whole thing on a website he made. The music's on there. It does kind of sound like the Beatles' version of like Pink Floyd's Division Bell, you know, like just music they would have done in their later years. Is this just a really creative art project or a hoax though? Or is there a chance there's really a whole Beatles album online from a parallel universe? Back in the 12th century, the quiet village of Woolpit in England got a visit from two very strange kids. A brother and sister showed up out of nowhere, looking completely lost. They were also bright green, not a sickly green, I mean a kind of like Shrek hue. The locals were kind of freaked out, but they took them in. The kids didn't speak any recognizable language. They were terrified of sunlight, and they refused to eat anything except raw beans for days. Now eventually they adjusted a bit. The boy unfortunately got sick and died not long after, but the girl survived and slowly learned to speak English. And that's when she started telling people some pretty strange things. She said they came from a place called St. Martin's Land, where everything had a greenish twilight and the sun never fully shone. According to her, the two of them had been tending to their father's flock when they heard this loud noise and suddenly found themselves in Woolpit. Were these mysterious green children from some different culture and just got lost, or had they somehow wandered out of a parallel world? In 1957, something terrible happened in the quiet town of Hexham, England. Two sisters, Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock, were hit by a car and killed while walking to church. Their parents, understandably, were devastated, but about a year later, the mother got pregnant again, and in 1958, she gave birth to twins again. Jillian and Jennifer, they named them. Now, from the start, there were some odd things. Jennifer had birthmarks in the exact same place as Jacqueline had them. And as they got older, the twins started asking for toys that had belonged to their dead sisters, toys they'd never seen before. They even knew their names. They also seemed to have memories of places they'd never been, like a school the older girls had attended. One time the twins pointed out a park they claimed to recognize, saying, "That's where we used to play." The By the time they turned 5, though, the memories began to fade. The girls grew up like normal kids, eventually forgetting all the strange things they used to say, but their father became convinced that Joanna and Jacqueline had been reincarnated into their twin sisters. Was it a case of parental grief mixing with coincidence, or did something actually transfer over? Like two souls refusing to move on, jumping right back into the same family. A lot of people who've heard this story kinda think so. And that's why the story of the Pollack twins became one of the most famous reincarnation cases ever recorded. In 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson was driving home late at night in Minnesota when his car went into a ditch near the town of Lind. He wasn't hurt, he was just stuck, so he called his parents around 1:30 a.m. and asked them to come get him. He said he was near Lind. When they drove out there, they couldn't find him. He stayed on the phone with them for nearly 47 minutes, calmly describing where he was walking. Then suddenly, in the middle of the call, Brandon said, "Oh, and the line went dead. That was the last time anyone heard from him. His car was eventually found, but they never found a body, and to this day, Brandon Swanson's disappearance remains completely unsolved. In 1901, two English school teachers, Anne Moberly and Charlotte Jourdain, took a trip to Paris. While visiting the Palace of Versailles, they decided to explore the gardens near the Petit Trianon, Marie Antoinette's old stomping grounds. But as they wandered, something felt kinda off. The air got heavy, the atmosphere changed. The people they passed were suddenly wearing 18th century clothing. One man in a wide-brimmed hat looked downright ghostly even. They claimed the place felt lifeless and surreal, like walking into a painting. But then, out of nowhere, everything snapped back to normal. Later, they became convinced that they had time-slipped straight into pre-revolution France, possibly 1792. They even claimed to have seen Marie Antoinette herself sketching by the grass. They wrote a book about it under fake names, and the story became relatively famous. Some believed it, some said they were just delusional or making it up entirely, but both women stuck to their story for the rest of their lives. Were they hallucinating, or did they somehow catch a rip in time and stumble into the past? There's a patch over the South Atlantic Ocean called the South Atlantic Anomaly, and it's kinda like the Bermuda Triangle but for space. So satellites that pass over it glitch out. Laptops on the International Space Station will sometimes crash. Astronauts report seeing flashes of light even when their eyes are closed. Why? Because in this spot, Earth's magnetic field is weirdly weak, like dangerously weak, which allows more cosmic radiation to pour in. NASA even has to shut off instruments when passing over it because they can't guarantee accurate readings. Some satellites have flat out died after taking too many passes, and here's the freakiest part: the anomaly seems to be growing and splitting. And conspiracy theorists, they got plenty of theories. Ancient alien tech buried under the ocean, a secret underground base, a rift to another dimension, possibly.
To start us off today, let's talk about what exactly a parallel universe is and how they came to be known as mirror worlds. A parallel universe, simply put, is a universe that is similar to our own but also incredibly different. They exist alongside our own but follow their own unique set of laws in physics. They are endless and cover every possible scenario that could ever happen in the history of ever and beyond. I sound like Buzz Lightyear. They could be almost the exact same as our own, with the difference of one person wearing a blue shirt one day rather than a red one. Or they could be vastly different, with oceans and lands existing in completely opposite geographical locations and gravity pulling us up instead of keeping us down. Conversations regarding fate and the nature of free will turn pretty much upside down when the idea of a parallel universe gets involved. It's confusing and overwhelming, but not entirely inconceivable, suggesting that scientifically they definitely don't not exist. And here comes James with an explanation of why they probably do, other than the fact that they definitely don't. You get it.
Why exactly is our universe expanding? Well, a recent study by the Journal of Cosmology and Astroparticle Physics may have an explanation, and it relates to parallel universes. The universe is always expanding, and most scientists believe dark energy is behind the growth, but dark energy has never actually been directly observed. A recent study published in December of 2023 by researchers from the University of Copenhagen and the Tokyo Institute of Technology put forward that our universe might be expanding because it's merging with baby parallel universes. Almost like our universe is this cosmic blob absorbing other smaller universes, kind of like Galactus. Physicist Jan Ambjorn explained that, quote, the accelerated expansion of our universe caused by the mysterious dark energy might have a simple, intuitive explanation, the merging with so-called baby universes, and that a model for this might fit the data better than the standard cosmological model. Obviously, this is theoretical, but it is interesting and would explain some things. For example, it could explain the rapid inflation of our universe that it experienced right after the Big Bang. Scientists have always believed this inflation was caused by a hypothetical field called the inflation, but the new study suggests that our universe, when it was just a baby, could have been absorbed by another older universe, invites the suggestion that this expansion was caused by a collision with a larger universe. That is, it was really our universe, which was absorbed in another parent universe.
Next up, we have the scientific anomaly of dark matter, which scientists have recently begun to theorize could possibly create, or have already created, invisible parallel universes. You see, a long time ago, scientists discovered Neptune after noticing gravitational anomalies affecting Uranus, causing it to move in a strange way. Since then, scientists have noticed many stars and galaxies moving in ways that don't quite make sense, but unlike the discovery of Neptune in regards to the strange behavior, scientists have not been able to find any quantifiable reason for the anomaly, and so they theorized that there must be some kind of invisible force pulling on the stars and galaxies, the invisible force likely being dark matter. It is believed that dark matter is made up of tiny particles that have limited, if any, interaction with one another. Basically, it's the complete opposite of regular matter. The particles are shy, so shy in fact that they actively push things away from them rather than pulling things towards them. This is the same force that scientists believe is causing the universe to expand. But wait, there's more. Scientists theorize that it is possible that dark matter is not actually as boring, a relative term, as it seems, and that it might possibly contain an entire sector of hidden particles, and possibly even a hidden that is an exact copy of ours, containing hidden versions of electrons and protons, which together create hidden atoms and molecules, which combine to make hidden planets, animals, stars, and possibly even people. It's out there, for sure, but according to the theory, so is at least one, if not countless, parallel universes.
Next up, we have a very strange story about a couple whose neighbor had just recently died, but then they saw him just a couple months after reading his obituary. Did they jump into a parallel universe? You be the judge. The story comes to us from Reddit user YT Bay. The Redditor and his wife worked in the same building, so they often walked to work together. One morning they left the house, they passed by the doctor's office because his wife had an appointment. She stopped there and he continued on to work. Nothing unusual. Now on his route, the user noticed a familiar face in the distance. It was an old Italian man who used to sit outside his apartment, greeting neighborhood commuters. But the eerie part was, the man had died a couple months before. The Redditor crossed the street, convincing himself that it was just a lookalike. He saw the man, he knew he was dead, but dismissed it as maybe a mistaken identity. He thought nothing more of it and continued to work. Now at work, his wife called, sounding concerned. She said, "I think I'm hallucinating." She explained she had seen their dead neighbor, sitting in his usual spot just like the husband had seen. The Redditor found this strange since he'd been reading about switching dimensions. He didn't tell his wife about it because it seemed too out there, but she suggested they might have switched dimensions. Something she would normally never say. So you're probably thinking, sure, the man they saw may have been a look-alike, but here's where it gets even stranger. They'd gone to the neighbor's funeral, seen social media posts mourning his death, but now they couldn't find any trace of him having died.
Next up, kind of going off of James's point, while it's not entirely scientific, it is incredibly interesting. It is the Mandela effect, but I am not just talking about the whole Berenstain Bears debate, or even whether or not Curious George had a tail, or if it was ever in the city rather than and the city, or if it's spelled Febreze or Febreze. It's spelled Febreze, by the way. Or Skechers or Skechers, or if the Monopoly man had a monocle or no monocle, if the Fruit of the Loom logo ever had a cornucopia, if it's called Cheez-Its or Cheez-It, or even if the fact that chartreuse is actually a shade of green, not magenta as we all remember being taught in our past. I'm talking about these Mandela effects that might have very well changed your life as you know it, like you incorrectly remembering a dead neighbor, or the results of an election and the events that played out after the fact, or recalling different laws or policies that you can distinctly remember being enacted but that in reality never existed. If you've ever experienced anything like this on a personal level and none of your friends or family can remember the events in question, you might just be in the wrong universe, but don't worry, we're happy to have you.
This next story also comes to us from Reddit from a user Living4U95 who talks about her glasses mysteriously changing color. So in 2018, the Reddit user bought blue framed glasses from Walmart. She had blue Vans, a blue purse, tried to get as much blue stuff as possible, including the blue glasses. After having a baby a couple years after, she started feeling the blue glasses were a bit childish. She stopped taking selfies in them, but still wore them every day. Now, one day while driving home, the Redditor looked in the rearview mirror and was shocked to see her glasses were now black on the front, with only the sides being blue. She thought, like, what the heck, did my husband prank me on April 1st and I just hadn't noticed? So she texted her husband, who assured her that he wasn't pranking her. She texted her mom asking what color her glasses were. Her mom said, blue. Why? The Redditor then texted her mother-in-law, who also said they were blue, and her best friend from middle school confirmed, saying, I know they were blue. We were together nearly every day for 2 years. They were blue. The Redditor insisted they never got new glasses. They even checked old pictures on Instagram, Facebook, and her phone, and now suddenly all the glasses in the pictures were black and blue. And it's odd that people wouldn't have noticed this, because that black is pretty predominant on there.
Next up, we have cosmic background radiation and how it might be hinting at not only a parallel universe, but one that may have very well bumped heads with our own. In a distant region of space towards the constellation of Eridanus, cosmic background radiation showed evidence of a large hole in space. Yes, a literal hole in space, completely void of all types of matter, including normal matter, which makes up gas and dust, stars, planets, and galaxies. This spot, it's completely empty, and it's incredibly massive, measuring 1 billion light years in diameter, making it one of the largest voids discovered to date. For comparison, the previous record-holding void was only somewhere between 250 and 330 million light years in diameter. Well, some scientists have begun theorizing that the newly discovered void, in correspondence with the other void located in the opposite hemisphere, could have been created by another universe bumping into our own, and either displacing or destroying a large chunk of matter within our universe, which is terrifying. Yeah, that's just...
Next up, we have an interesting theory involving math. Never thought I'd use the words math and interesting in the same sentence, but here we are. Maybe I've switched universes. The mathematical multiverse theory suggests different mathematical structures might represent separate universes. Since there are infinite mathematical possibilities, there could be infinite universes. So think of our universes being made entirely of math, a huge cosmic equation. Everything we see and experience, from tiny particles to massive galaxies, they can all be broken down using mathematics. So according to this theory, different mathematical structures create different universes, each with its own unique set of rules. Basically, if a mathematical structure can exist, so can a universe based on it, in theory.
Next up, we have quantum mechanics, which very existence suggests the possibility of endless parallel universes. For those of you who don't know, quantum mechanics is a branch of mechanics that provides a mathematical description for motion and interaction within subatomic particles. Concepts like quantization of energy, how much an electron can radiate or absorb, wave-particle duality, that anything can either be described as a wave or a particle, the uncertainty principle, the fact that we cannot know both the position and speed of photons and electrons with perfect accuracy, and the correspondence principle, the limit of large quantum numbers causing predictions of quantum physics to mirror classical physics, can all be used to hint towards a theory of many world's multiverse, in which the universe splits into multiple branches anytime any decision is made, anywhere by anyone. Basically, any outcome of any event exists in its own separate universe. What's interesting about this is that it also might solve the time travel debate in relation to the bootstrap paradox as well as the grandfather paradox, which, if you've never heard of, we have a video on. And the reason why it solves this debate is because it states that if you go back and change something in the past, you haven't actually changed anything in your own universe, just simply gone and created a new one.
Alright, finally, we've covered countless unexplained disappearances on this channel from across time. Some are individuals who mysteriously vanish. Some are mass cases of vanishings, like on planes or ships. But what does this have to do with parallel universes? Well, of course, there are tons of possible explanations for people going missing. Flawless kidnappings, their bodies ending up in places that just don't get searched. Alien abductions, probably the most likely. But what about the possibility of them having crossed over to a parallel universe? It sounds pretty far-fetched, but I mean, who really knows? Maybe all these people saying they feel like they've crossed over into a different reality because things are different than they remembered really have crossed over into a different universe, and their friends and loved ones in their original universe are desperately searching for them to no avail.
Coming in at number 10 is the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle covers about 500,000 square miles of ocean off the southeastern tip of Florida. It's a section of the Atlantic Ocean roughly bounded by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, where dozens of ships and airplanes have disappeared. Unexplained circumstances surround this area, as it's known that compasses have malfunctioned here back when Christopher Columbus was sailing the world. Now, some speculate that unknown and mysterious forces account for the unexplained disappearances, such as extraterrestrials capturing humans for study, the influence of the lost continent of Atlantis, and vortexes that suck objects into other dimensions. There have been so many planes and ships that have gone missing over the area, with people on them suddenly just going poof. Now, where did all those people go? I think to another dimension. Number 9, the Gates of Guinea. According to voodoo mythology, the newly dead are sent to a kind of purgatory before traveling to meet their ancestors in the deep waters. Known as Guinea, this realm is presided over by the notorious Loa, who goes by the name of Baron Samedi. There are tales of voodoo practitioners opening the gates of Guinea to reclaim the souls of the dead. Now, souls in this lost land are considered to be at high risk from hoodoo magicians who have the power to reanimate them as zombies. Yeah. Zombies. While some followers of voodoo interpret the 7 gates as a spiritual metaphor, others believe them to exist in the physical realm. Now, one of these stories locates the gates in New Orleans. To enter Guinea, it is said that one must open the 7 gates in the correct order. Each successive gate is presided over by one of the Loa of Death, who must be appeased with the appropriate offerings. Now, although the exact location of the gates have never been disclosed, there have been suggestions over the years that the clue may lie in the Vive, or summoning signal of Baron Samedi himself. Appearing as a crucifix surmounted by 7 stars, the symbol might be a map of some kind and once aligned over the crossroads of Canal Street and Bazin Street in the city's French Quarter, as the stars of the Veve seem to fall on notable surrounding cemeteries. Number 8, the Alaska Triangle. This remote area is infamous for alien abductions, Bigfoot sightings, and paranormal phenomena and vanishing airplanes. Like much of Alaska, the triangle contains some of the most rugged, unforgiving wilderness in North America. It's an impossible vast expanse of dense forests, craggy mountain peaks, alpine lakes, and large swaths of plain old wilderness. Now, with all this, it's no shock that people go missing. What is surprising, however, is the sheer number of people who go missing. Add to the fact that many disappear without a shred of evidence, and bodies, alive or dead, are rarely found. More than 16,000 people, including airplane passengers, hikers, locals, and tourists, have disappeared within the Alaska Triangle since 1988. The rate per 1,000 people is more than twice the national missing person average, and the rate of people who are never found is even higher. Now, the numbers don't lie, and they imply that something else is going on here than people merely getting lost in the mountains. Is it a portal taking people to another world? I think so. Number 7. Hoska Castle. The Hoska Castle is located in the forest north of Prague and is one of the most haunted places in the world. According to the legend, on this exact spot, there was a huge hole in the ground that was considered to be the gateway to hell. Paranormal activities were disturbing the region, and the Bohemians thought they would solve their problems if they covered the hole, so that's why they built the castle. Now, no one actually wanted to build this castle and get close to the portal, so they used prisoners to help. Hundreds of prisoners were forced to go into the pit to build the foundation for the castle. However, when they were taken out of the hole, they all looked like old men. The first prisoner lasted only a few seconds before he began screaming. When he was pulled back up, the story goes, his hair had turned white, and it seemed like he'd aged 30 years, and he babbled incoherently about half-human creatures who flapped through the darkness of grotesque wings. Now today, witnesses report several different forms of paranormal activities, and some even claim that the site contains remains of demonic beasts who escaped from the pit. Number 6. Gate of the Sun. Believed by some to be a portal to the land of the gods, the Gate of the Sun in Bolivia shares much of its legends with other similar sites. Tiwanaku is a city said to be one of the most important sites of ancient America, with legends stating that the sun god Viracocha appeared in Tiwanaku and made it the place of creation, the place he chose to start the human race. Carved from one block of stone and thought to be 14,000 years old, the gateway displays what appears to be human beings with rectangular helmets. Now, this has led many researchers to state the purpose of the gate is indeed connected to something astronomical. The top middle of the arch features a carving of the supposed sun god and shows what looks to be rays of light appearing behind and forcing their way all around all sides of the deity's head. Although it now stands upright, when it was found by European explorers in the mid-1800s, it was said to have been lying horizontally. It also appears to have a large crack on the top right of the arch, and it is unknown how this happened. Number 5. Sedona Vortexes. Sedona, a small town in Arizona, was once known by the Native American tribes as Nawanda, and at one time the most sacred city to them. It is said that the red rocks of the desert that surround the small town can create vortexes with the capability of transporting people to another realm or dimension. Native Americans believe that these rocks were spiritually charged, while sounds emanating from them have been reported. In the 1950s, a local tribesman was aiding treasure hunters who were searching for gold in the mountains. He told them a story of his people dating it back to the 1800s, of 3 tribesmen who had discovered the archway while riding in the desert. The story goes that when one of them walked through, he simply disappeared. The helpful tribesman stated he had also seen a strange incident at the alleged doorway. While out in the desert, a sudden rainstorm hit the area and turned the skies gray with clouds. Now, as he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of the archway and saw that the skies through the arch were clear blue. He walked closer to it, seeing that the archway's image of the mountain range was the same and the only difference was the sky. However, he too became scared, mounted his horse, and returned home. Number 4. The Bennington Triangle. Located in the southwestern part of Vermont, this landlocked triangular area is notorious for a string of unexplained disappearances that occurred there. Between 1945 and 1950, 5 people disappeared in the Bennington Triangle. Now, the shocking thing is 4 out of the 5 missing people were never found. The only person found was Frida Langer. On October 28, 1950, Frida and her cousin Herbert Elsner left their family campsite near the Somerset Reserve to go on a hike. During the journey, she slipped and fell into a stream, and she told Herbert if he would wait, she would go back to the campsite, change clothes, and catch up to him. Now, when she did not return, Herbert made his way back to the campsite and discovered that Frida had not returned and that nobody had seen her since they left. Over the next 2 weeks, 5 searches were conducted involving aircraft, helicopters, and up to 300 searchers. No trace of Frida was found during the search, and then on May 12, 1951, Frida's body was found 3.5 miles from the campsite in the eastern branch of the Deerfield River, an area that had been searched 7 months previously. No cause of death could be determined because of the condition of her remains, and it appears that the Bennington Triangle will always remain a mystery. Number 3. The Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel is a 140-room colonial revival hotel about 5 miles from the entrance to Rocky Mountain National Park. Now, the Stanley Hotel inspired the Overlook Hotel in Stephen King's 1977 best-selling novel, The Shining. Now, the owner died in 1940, but many believe his presence can still be seen and felt at the hotel, mainly at the bar and in the billiard room. The ghost of his wife Flora has a habit for tinkering around on the hotel's piano, according to multiple accounts. Now, the fourth floor is the most haunted, with guests hearing children's laughter in the hall with no one to be found. Down the hall in room 407, multiple guests have reported being tucked into bed by some invisible force, and others have felt someone sit on the foot of the bed only to find nothing there. In room 428, some have had the vision of a cowboy looming over the bed as they slept or standing in the corner. Now, how do all these ghosts get in there? Well, it's the portal in the hotel. When you enter the hotel, there is a staircase landing filled with paintings and mirrors facing each other. Now, if you don't know, it's said if you put two mirrors in front of each other, they create a portal to another world. Why would anyone place two mirrors in front of each other? For the portal, of course, and that's exactly what they did at the Stanley Hotel. Number 2, the Devil's Sea. In the Pacific Ocean south of Tokyo, Japan, lies a treacherous stretch of water that has been nicknamed the Devil's Sea. Due to a string of vessels and fishing boats that have disappeared, many compare it to the Bermuda Triangle. Now, the most famous of these disappearances happened in 1953 when a research fishery ship called the Kyotomoro No. 5, which consisted of 31 crew members and scientists combined, sailed into the area to investigate a recently formed volcanic island. Unfortunately, the vessel never returned from its voyage, with no traces left of it, or the crew for that matter. With so many people missing there too, there has to be something else going on that they are experiencing that we don't know. And coming in at number 1 is the Nevada Triangle. Consisting of vast stretches of the desert and the Sierra Nevada mountains, this triangular area in the Silver State has made headlines in recent years due to a disappearance that occurred in 2007. The victim was an aviator adventurer named Steve Fawcett, who flew into the Nevada Triangle in a small plane and was never seen again, despite the massive search for him. But he's not the only one, as many others have disappeared before him. Some 2,000 planes have been lost in the last 60 years. In this remotely populated area of more than 25,000 miles of mountain desert, many crashes are never found. Then, of course, Area 51 is there. With the area's close proximity to Area 51, it has led some theorists to speculate the presence of UFOs in the Nevada Triangle have been responsible for some of these disappearances.
At number 10, where is the rest of this apartment building? Man, that razor-thin building in the picture is something else. I mean, you cannot convince me that it's not one-dimensional. I mean, seriously, how the heck did they pull off this effect? It looks like 3 sides of this building just disappeared into the thin air, leaving it looking like a single one-dimensional side of an apartment building, missing all the rest of its walls. I'm telling you, man, it seems like either a parallel universe collided with ours just at that perfect spot, or this picture is proof that we live in a simulated reality and that the rest of the building simply failed to render. I'll let you guys decide in the comments. At number 9, the monster of Mariana's Trench. Now, this one isn't a photo, but real-life unexpected audio depicting what sounds like the freaking Kraken emerging out of the depths of the Mariana Trench. So, a submarine descending into the depths of the deepest crevice on Earth, scientists heard an unidentifiable sound, which almost sounded like giant claws were carving into the side of the trench's walls. This weird noise, now known to science as the Western Pacific biotwang, love that word, got recorded multiple times between 2014 and 2015. Now, experts can't be sure on what exactly is making this horrific sound. However, they think, and emphasis on think, that it's the jam of a dwarf minke whale, or minke whale, a kind of baleen whale. But here's the puzzler. See, usually whales only belt out these sorts of sounds when they're flirting for a date, but this one is breaking all of the rules, playing its tune all year round and at the bottom of the trench. Why? Nobody knows. Maybe it's a whale, maybe it's freaking Cthulhu coming to get us. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the airplane in space. Check out this incredible view from somebody's airplane seat. It seriously looks like the pilot got a bit carried away and flew the plane way too high, like straight into our atmosphere. I mean, that purple-pink cosmic display through the window is like, almost looks like a whole otherworldly galaxy out there. Now, Logic is telling me that for as mind-blowing as this seems, that this cosmic spectacle might not be intergalactic after all. Personally think what we're looking at here is a stunning pattern created by droplets of water freezing on the window in this particular pattern. Those frozen droplets can form these breathtaking shapes that mimic the beauty of a distant galaxy. So while I really want to believe that this plane is on its way to Alpha Centauri, it's probably just nature showing off its creative side. I can't quite think of an explanation for the colors though. I mean, have you ever seen the sky take on those shades of purple and pink? I mean, maybe we are looking at man's first interplanetary travel from the inside of a 747. At number 7 are perfect rows of bubbles in a pot of boiling water. This pot of boiling water is definitely something else. At first glance, you might have mistaken that water for a sheet of bubble wrap, what with how pristine the rows of bubbles are aligned. But alas, what you're looking at is actually perfectly synchronized boiling water, with the bubbles lined up in perfect rows, giving off that we live in a simulation kind of vibe. I mean, just look at it, it's like nature's created this perfect, orderly pattern in the chaos of this boiling water. Bubbles line up in these perfect rows, almost like they're following some sort of unseen code or snapping to a grid. Kinda makes you wonder if there's some underlying structure or design to everything around us, you know? Crazy how even the seemingly innocuous act of simply bringing water to a boil, you can spot these bizarrely organized patterns that hint at a glitch in the code of reality. At number 6 is the victim of the beast. This gravestone, belonging to Lily E. Gray, claims she lived from June 1881 to November of 1958, making it to 77 years old. But what's eerie about this tombstone, aside from the fact that somebody seems to have adorned it with what looks like an offering of garlic, is that it claims that Lily was a, quote, victim of the beast 666. Now that's the kind of thing that makes you pause and wonder. I mean, I would definitely consider grabbing a Ouija board to chat with Lily and find out exactly what the heck went down. Really curious to know the full scoop behind that eerie inscription. I mean, seriously though, seeing something like Victim of the Beast 666 on a gravestone is like stumbling upon a mystery that's just begging to be solved. Kind of thing that makes you want to start concocting wild theories and wanting to delve deeper into the story behind it. Now, I'm not really sure if this is supposed to be a reference or some sort of symbolic inscription or something else entirely, but it's definitely intriguing. At number 5, where the hell is this car parked? So here's the picture from a perspective of somebody sitting in their car, parked in their driveway, which is obviously outside. However, if you take a look in the rear view mirror, where you would expect to see the street or whatever the heck is behind the car, instead you're met with the sight of the inside of what appears to be an infant's bedroom with crib, rocking horse and all. The perspective almost makes it look as though the car was parked right inside, but I mean that clearly ain't the case. It's mind-boggling. Perhaps this is a real-life glitch or maybe just a portal to another dimension opened up right behind this driver. But come on, like how does this even happen? You park your car and somehow the view from the back window is straight into somebody's bedroom? Perfectly unexpected and surreal. Now, I'm assuming that this is just one of those rare and totally baffling situations where everything aligns just perfectly to create this mind-blowing optical illusion. Either that, or the driver just stepped inside a real-life Twilight Zone episode. At number 4 is this airplane cabin fog. If I were someone with a touch of airplane anxiety, seeing my cabin filled with fog would definitely have me questioning why I didn't sneak a parachute into my carry-on. I mean, seriously. It's like this plane just flew straight into an interdimensional plane and entered the Stephen King mist reality. But even being indoors doesn't seem like a safe bet in this scenario. Crazy how something as simple as fog filling up a cabin can give off that eerie otherworldly vibe. So upon discovering this image, I just had to go digging for an explanation, and luckily, science actually does have an answer for this one. Okay, so here's the deal. Misty fog can pop up in your airplane for a few reasons. One biggie is changes in temperature and humidity. When you've got folks boarding and there's bringing in moisture from outside, especially if there's a sudden change in the cabin's conditions, it can cause condensation and bam, next thing you know, it's fog city up in there. Now sometimes this could also be a little glitch in the plane's air conditioning or ventilation system, or maybe somebody keeps opening and closing the overhead bins a bunch, or there's a door constantly getting jiggled during boarding. Allegedly, all that can let in humid air, leading to the whole fog show somehow. So rest assured, it's not paranormal activity or anything. Apparently this happens a lot more often than you would think, and there are actually procedures in place for the flight crew to sort it out. At number 3, this partially rendered building glitch. Imagine strolling down the streets on a cloudy day, minding your own business, this, and suddenly you spot this building that seems like it's been playing hide and seek with reality. So there's this brick wall that seems like it's in the middle of being painted, but the color of the new paint is an exact match to the gloomy gray sky hovering behind it. It's like someone took a break halfway through painting and the background weather decided to join in on the fun by being all gray and moody. The ultimate accidental camouflage, making you wonder if you're witnessing a real-life Matrix glitch. The way the building's facade blends seamlessly with the sky creates this surreal effect, like our wall was only halfway materialized in our world. This is the part where you'd start questioning whether a painter overslept on the job, or this is the genius architectural illusion meant to mess with our heads. The brick wall seems to merge with the atmosphere, giving off this effect like when buildings partially render in video games. The kind of sight that makes you rub your eyes twice, making sure you're not living in a digital simulation. At number 2 is this interdimensional spider. This neon green spider looks like it's straight out of Dimension 42, minus the 42 insignia on its booty. Like, come on, you're telling me that this thing ain't radioactive? That I won't turn into Spider-Man if it takes a bite out of me? You must be the crazy one. Now, what's even eerier is how the spider has a white carnival clown looking face. Now, believe it or not, there are actually a plethora of spider species that are neon green, and this pretty faced little guy is likely part of the Mopsus Mormon species, though I am not a spider expert, so I can't say for sure. Now, the reason behind this crazy coloration is either to attract mates or camouflage themselves. It seems like Spider-Man ain't the only one setting fashion trends here. And hey, this neon green spider might be a standout in its own right, but it's just one of the many examples of wondrous diversity nature has up its sleeve. And at number 1 is the don't care button. Have you seen this keyboard with a dedicated don't care button? It almost feels kind of rebellious to have such a key, but now that I know that it exists, I am seriously thinking that it should be standard on every single keyboard out there. Like, no kidding. I mean, who wouldn't want that level of carefree functionality at their fingertips? Imagine having a button solely designated for the don't care mood, like a magic portal to a world where you can just shrug things off with a click. But seriously, where the heck has this button been all this time? Honestly, I would definitely sign up to live in a reality where this don't care button is the norm. It's one of those genius ideas that makes you wonder why it hasn't been part of our lives from the get-go. Who knew such a single key could make life feel so refreshingly carefree?